In the future, you might not ever get another human to join your team. We are in the age of a single person company becoming $1 billion unicorn.
I literally think the matrix is real. Because it's not just AI, there's quantum, blockchain obviously is robotics. Elon talking about there are going to be more humanoids than people by 2040.
We had security officer for Meta, Anthropic, OpenAI, head of startups at AWS. And the way that we were speaking about agents, I felt like I was in this room that was 5 years ahead of everybody else.
Because this is reimagining the way we do business, the way we operate.
And this is probably the most important tip I can provide. People think that these agents are teammates, when actually they should be zero trust, untrusted contractors.
I think about this stuff all the time. Where the hell are we going? I've spent 2 decades guiding CEOs and founders to scale and reimagine what's possible. Now, the biggest shift of our lifetime is here, AI. I'm Seema Alexander, founder of Disruptive AI, co-chair of DC Startup and Tech Week, and the host of the AI CEO podcast. If you're ready to learn how AI is transforming industries, creating new growth, and rewriting the rules of business, this is the podcast for you. Because the truth is, the leaders who adapt now won't just survive, they'll define the future. Let's tap in. Welcome to this edition of the AI CEO podcast. My name is Seema Alexander, and I am your host. And today I have who I consider, and I've said it from the day one when I heard about this guest in particular, Noelle Russell, the queen of AI, sitting next to me on my podcast stage. What up, Noelle?
What's up? Let's go.
Oh my God.
It's a long time coming.
A long time coming. We've been trying to get you on the podcast for a while. If you don't know who Noelle is, perplexity her instead of Google like that.
That's right.
So no longer Google her. No, but I'll tell you my personal version of it, and then she can give you even more creds. But for me, I learned about Noelle through a friend. I think it was Rob Richardson, right? Or previous to that a while. And it was just, I've been searching for the best of the best in the industry, the people who understand where this next phase of AI is going, who have the expertise, the knowledge, the passion, the conviction, all of the things, right? And then so when I started looking up Noelle, I'm like, what? Who is this woman and why don't we know her? Or why don't I personally know her? And I'll tell you that story in a second. But for me, it was you worked on Alexa with Jeff Bezos. You created 100 apps for Alexa before AI was a thing. And we're going to get into all that. You worked at IBM. You led AI for Accenture. You just keep going. I was funny. I was with my daughter in the car. I was like, can you just look up all of Noelle's accolades? And I say it in a way that I think your story that I know you share a lot, but we'll get into a little bit of that, right? But it's I always find when someone is focused on emerging technology or anything, there's a conviction behind the why.
That's for sure.
We're a little crazy in this space when we're trying to tell everybody the world is changing. You got to get on board. And your story and your passion comes from years of lived experience, So Noelle, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to say thank you for being on the podcast. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm going to change up some of the conversations that I've heard previously on some of your pods.
Great.
Yes. And why don't you just take a second to introduce yourself a little bit more and we're going to get right into it.
Oh my gosh, so excited. Yes. I'm Noelle Russell. I started a company actually 10 years ago. It's our anniversary just yesterday, called AI Leadership Institute. And I've always been, I guess it probably started when I first started sharing the dream of AI with executives. I realized that there was a huge gap, a gap that you actually fill very well, which is why we were meant to meet. But there was a huge gap in understanding awareness of what this technology would do for their business. But this was back in 2013. So I started this company really thinking about, okay, how are we going to change the way executives make decisions about buying this technology? But that, of course, was just the beginning. I got that bug because I was a solution architect working for AWS, Amazon Web Services. I'm an engineer by trade. I love engineering, fingers on keyboard, learning by doing. And I got an email from Jeff Bezos and he invited me to join this brand new team. And I always find out.
No small feat. Yeah. Just hey, Jeff.
Right, Jeff, what's up? And so I got offered an opportunity to join this team. But it was interesting because it came on the heels of a time when not everybody wanted to do something new, right? Most people were thinking to themselves, wow, we just delivered the Fire Phone and it failed. For those of, the members of the audience who remember that time. Fire Phone was a huge investment. It failed, and it created a principle in me of, people over product.
Yeah.
Because we needed those people with that failure and that experience to join Alexa, and they didn't come because we didn't, I don't think the organization really treated them very well. But anyway, I went and I was excited to do it as employee 10, built over 100 apps. I always like to tell people I built them in a category that most people didn't think would be very important, but now is a huge category, which was mindfulness and wellness.
Visionary.
Yes. But you know how it is.
Yeah.
Like, you come up with these ideas and everyone calls you crazy at first.
Yes.
And then they laugh at you, but then they follow you, and then they want to be, building skills like you. And now I have millions of users of those skills, tens of thousands of 5-star reviews, which, if you know Alexa, most people don't review Alexa. So to get that many positive reviews on a platform that people don't usually like to say nice things, it was a pretty important time, and it set the trajectory for the rest of my career.
Oh, women, you're a woman, you're a builder, you're an engineer, you're probably the only woman on the team, right?
Yeah, I was also the only, I think even more maybe neurodivergent, is that I was the only mom on the team. I was the only caregiver taking care of my dad. I was the only cat owner, so I just super divergent from what they were used to and what they were interested in.
And look, we're at a place now that AI obviously has changed in terms of accessibility, and people are starting to get educated. Lots more education needed.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the large language models, OpenAI, 2022 is a big year, right? But you had a why prior. You mentioned you have children. You have 6
I have
children.
6 kiddos.
Yeah, 2. And I'm like, I have 2 dogs, 2 in-laws, all the things, but like
2 by 2.
2. One's the older one is sitting right there. But there was a situation with one of your children that also brought you deeper into the world of AI, and your father. So maybe just briefly share that, because this is the conviction of why. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with you. I do think that those of us called to do this work early, before people think it's cool, are called for a very personal reason. And I share it. I try to share it with everyone, because I think it's more important than the thing I'm going to share or the model I'm going to teach them. But like, you also have to have this conviction as a leader, as an executive, like that you have to know why you're going to do something, mostly because it doesn't always go well. But I guess this was maybe 20 years ago now. I was pregnant with my first child. And when I was pregnant with him, it all went great. Like, I had never been, I was a first-time mom, so I was super excited about it. He was late, which was a little odd because I didn't know babies could be late. But then when he was born with a condition known as Down syndrome. And as a first-time mom, I had never even heard of that. Like, I did not have any reason to know what that was. So it kind of set me on a like a little bit of a whirl. And you're postpartum. I'm like, wait, what is happening? But a couple things occurred to me right away. One, I'm a Latina, so I kind of like mull in. So that was no big deal. But the other thing was that I'm a technologist. I grew up, the first time I got into tech was Y2K.
Everything was going to change. The world was done.
That's right. I always say, like, it was the first time the world was going to end, right? Like, we were all like, oh my gosh. But it taught me a lot about what you could do. I mean, we did amazing things in the middle of the night to protect the world from, what we thought would be a catastrophic outcome. So I was really inspired by technology, and that was Y2K. I realized, like, I can use tech as a tool to solve any problem.
Yeah.
So when I had my son, I was kind of like, I got this. I can fix this. And I think most technologists come at solutions that way. And we'll talk about this throughout the session, but I think it's very interesting, the evolution of that, because as a technologist, especially with AI, we actually can't fix anything.
Right.
Like, I can't fix problems for my son unless my son tells me what he wants fixed. And I think that became a cornerstone for what we do at the AI Leadership Institute. Is we never build for someone without them. We never blindly go, I'm a technologist, I'm a data scientist, I know the data, I can build you something. We start first with what hurts you, what bothers you, how can we fix this? And that becomes an incredibly important thread to what makes, what we do in our company important.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's, I've shared this story a lot, but like, my parents' businesses went from doing really well to close to bankruptcy in the 90s, right? And I look at now the correlation of the rise of the internet and them not paying attention. And there was so much that happened behind the scenes. And, again, why I have empathy for founders is because I know the roller coaster of the back end of stuff and the impact it has, right? And that personal journey of mine has brought me to this moment in time, because I'm like, I've done business growth strategy, brand positioning, all the things, and a lot in emerging tech. And because I know how big this shift is happening with AI, advising the companies years ago to like, holy moly, like, humanity and business is changing. That's my why, right? And
Yeah.
again, I think that's why you and I'm like, oh my God, I love
Yeah.
this. Like,
Yes, and
every
we
time I
both
hear-
lead with that story, right? Which
Yeah.
I think is very different. It's very much an anomaly in this space where
Yeah.
people lead with who they are first as opposed to what we're going to solve for.
Yeah.
And I think that allows people to realize like, oh my gosh, I'm you, or I had parents like that, or like they resonate with who we are as humans before we get into the AI technology that will help them. And I think that's not only is it different, but it's really, really been impactful.
Yeah, I love that. So let me ask you a question. Before you were a speaker and well known and all around, like pretend you had to like start from scratch. And in this new age of AI, is there something that you would build today that you haven't built in the past?
Well, what I do now is I build, I mean, I'm a builder, so I appreciate I think it's really important to show versus tell.
Yeah.
I'm also a seller. I'm also, business development executive. Like I like getting people from, I'm not sure, and this like hands across their chest, like, I'm not sure about this, to, oh, that's
Oh.
interesting, right? Leaning in, tell me more. Like this happens in the rooms that you're in as well. Like
Yeah.
it's so like validating when I'm like, yeah, like it's not what you think. It's
Yeah.
not who you were. It's who you are becoming. And AI will elevate that and give you a huge opportunity to change who you've been in the past and allow you to do all the things I call it, bring back the backlog. Like you can go back to the backlog of things, backlog of ideas you've ever had. And now all the reasons you didn't prioritize them might now make it possible. Like you can solve problems today that you could not solve 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
With the prompt.
Yeah, with just your words.
With just your words.
With just your words. So I think that has been a big kind of catalyst for a lot of the conversations that I've been in.
So why does this moment in time in this particular tech feel so different than any other in the past from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's different in the sense that I can show and not tell, right? I can be a doer, not a talker, and get rewarded for that. So in the conversations in the past, the reason I was so successful was because I was an engineer selling to customers. And so as an engineer, while I'm talking to a customer, I could understand their problem and then build them something in the context of the conversation. But most people who are having that conversation with a customer could not do that. So I became kind of like a unicorn having that skill. Today now, anyone, as you're talking, anyone can do that. I actually just did a TED Talk for Boston. And in the talk was called, I taught Alexa to speak, and now I'm worried that the world isn't, focused on AI that can listen, right? Like, are we teaching these machines to also understand humanity? And of course, that is our job as humans. And so though I'm delighted by the light bulb moment that happens, I realize like the only way that happens is not because I built an AI system in front of them. It's because I, as a human, coached them through this like epiphany moment. And that's, I think, it's the best feeling in the world.
So let's get an example. What is an AI system? What did you build, right?
Oh, sure.
I'm a big, let's anchor and give people examples, get them to understand as much as possible. So what does that mean?
Of course, I've worked on some of the largest systems in the world, so we'll try not to be super complex. But my favorite area of work is in customer service, right? Customer intelligence. And so many of the systems in 2022, and maybe I'll give the little backstory to how I built a practice. So I was at a large consulting organization, and I was also, during COVID, I was a beta tester of one of the models in OpenAI. It was called Codex. It was an engineering model. Eventually would become part of ChatGPT, but it had not launched yet. So I'm testing this thing out. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I had my own concerns about it, being a responsible ethicist. I was like, I'm not sure. But I worked through that. I'm always a beta tester. I'm like, happy to test your stuff and give you good feedback. Well, then I come into this consulting company and I have a chance and I'm like, hey, we should sell this thing I just learned. We should build a practice around GenAI. And they said, as most people do in the beginning of my crazy ideas, I don't think that's a good idea. Nobody will buy that.
This is a large Fortune 100 company.
Yeah. They're like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, well, maybe, what if I just did it in our own spare time? What if I did it like before hours, after hours, on the weekend? I built this practice and we just saw where it went. And over the course, that was in January. By August, September, we had made $300 million in revenue, gotten the attention of our CEO. The CEO then had promised $3 billion to grow out the entire organization. So I realized I love it when people say no. Like in my mind, it kind of GPTs into let's go, right? Like, how do we do this?
No.
But that the bulk of those projects that led to 300 million in revenue were in basically one main area, which was kind of customer intelligence, customer service. How do we serve the people that are paying us so they'll pay us more? And what we found out was a lot of organizations have a cost center, which is like contact centers, right? They have a bunch of humans. They are high turnover. They're not very good at understanding the problem. And I was like, what if we looked at, and this is my specific philosophy of approaching AI projects, it's like, what if we look at it not from how can we get rid of these people, which was an initial approach at the time, but instead said, what if we could turn this into a profit center? What if we could turn these humans, if we lose these people, they can't cross-sell or upsell. We lose that. We turn it into an AI system that will not sell anybody. So what if we instead amplified those humans? I call it helping the helper. So this contact center, we had to then find what's the one metric we can use to measure the success of those helpers. And we didn't want to immediately be like, you're all sellers now. We instead decided to focus on the amount of time they spent not talking to customers. It's called non-talk time in the industry. And so how do we eliminate or basically completely remove non-talk time? So at the beginning of the process, we created an LLM-based system that would listen to the conversation, do entity extraction, and then surface up topics so that the person on the call could at least easily search for what they needed to find.
Sure.
But now we are like, well, wait, we could actually add an additional model that will index and search for content. Then we could add a global trend identifier. So it's looking at all the agents and finding out, wait, right now, 70% of people are asking about this thing. Now we surface that to everyone proactively. And so now not only did it, of course, help them reduce the amount of time they were talking, because at the end, the last part of the process was using an LLM to document the call, stick it into a CRM, and automate the process of documentation and follow up with the client.
Right.
All of these things, like individually, were extremely valuable. But if an AI system couldn't do it end to end, and the human was necessary because the people, we were doing it for a major healthcare company. The people on the other side of the line were 75 years old. They were not interested in getting a QR code. They weren't interested in typing in numbers and trying to eject through the IVR system. They literally, when they start a call, are like, zero, representative. We've all been there.
Constantly.
Right?
And I talk about this example all the time, right? It's like, and in the world of AI, I mean, this is done years ago, I feel like, when you did this, right? And people are just catching on, right? So like like, what are the skills behind that AI system? I mean, I heard machine learning. I heard like the predictive part of it. Hey, there's like, these are the constant questions we get. Make sure that the CSR has that on their dashboard. It's like those things to make that experience for the customer that much better, but also for the CSR themselves, the customer service rep, so that they can get through these things. And I love your non-talk time concept. And then when you said they're selling, what were they selling in the healthcare system?
Yeah. So in this case, if somebody came and said, I have a baby, they're not doing well, they're sick, whatever, I need an appointment. If they said baby, sick, right, these entities would be identified. They would be mapped to find out, okay, let's go look at past history of this patient. Oh, they were born. When they were born, they identified celiac disease. That customer has already told us that, or we know it because we have their documentation. We can now say, oh, we remember that your baby, according to your records, right? Because it's an AI system. We don't say, I, as an AI system, thought of this on my own. Like, in your records, it shows that your baby actually has celiac. Do you still use these formulas that we've given you? And now, of course, if you know the space, there's generic, there's upgraded, there is subscription packs, right? So there's all this opportunity to now go directly to the problem. And many times, especially new moms that are calling, they also want to hear a human be like, it's okay, we got this, don't worry, right? And I know that as a new mom of a special needs child that I've had these conversations. And so I think, how do we equip those people that have to have this conversation with the information? And when you do that, not only do you help your customers or your patients in this case, but you also help the people. Like, they are now excited to go to work. They actually feel like they're helping. They don't feel like they're just a cog in a machine.
Yeah. I mean, they're solving problems.
Now they're solving problems.
Now they're not getting yelled at on the other side because they have the answers for the people that need it right now on demand.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think one of the transitions that happened that I thought was really interesting was that towards the end of the project, we realized that non-talk time, and this is true of every AI project, the metric you start with is often not the metric you end with. But we realized non-talk time, meaning reducing the amount of time they don't talk, that they increase the amount of time talking to humans, wasn't actually the right metric. We evolved to total time to resolution, that we wanted to give the human helping the client, helping the patient, helping the customer, give them as much time as they needed and a system to support solving that problem once and for all.
That's interesting because you gave them bedside manner time.
Yes. Yes.
Like, when you're a doctor in
Yes.
the office and they're like, you have 5 minutes with them, you're like, what was that? But now, and the CSR, you don't even really want to be on the phone with them, but if they're solving your problem, you're there for it.
That's right. And you're not going to transfer it, right? Like, we don't realize, like, non-talk time, I actually can look like I'm being successful if they transfer that call and that user has to start over.
Yeah. And
right?
why I'm going a little deeper and letting you continue on is because this is reimagining the way we do business, the way we operate. Right.
In just one space. Like, and this is infinite.
And you and I chat a lot about, like, AI fluency. For me, it's like, I want that CEO, the C-suite, obviously the employees too, but to understand what this technology can actually unlock.
Absolutely.
And without understanding, like, now with the ability of having machine learning and generative AI, what does that all mean for an actual AI system to do what we just said?
Yep.
Right. What is missing in the infrastructure right now?
I think one of the challenges is that organizations are fast evolving to what we call an agentic organization. And when you're considering infrastructure, typically my mind goes, I came from big infrastructure, right, to the AWS, Azure, Google Cloud world, right? Even NVIDIA.
So these are all COT solutions, like the larger integrators, if you will.
And you've already got, as an executive, you've already got relationships. It's very rare that a company today wouldn't have some workloads in the cloud.
Yes.
So you've already got that relationship and this is probably the most important tip I can provide someone is that if you've already done the work, now you might have to go back and check this work, but if you've built a well-architected cloud solution, the safest place to deploy your AI is in a system that's already deploying secure workloads. The biggest challenge I found, which is I'm speaking at a cybersecurity conference right now, the biggest challenge we find is that baseline work we were supposed to do in 2023 or 2013 or, oh my God, maybe 2003. Like, this is not new work, creating a secure cloud, infrastructure tenant. But if you haven't put those ducks in a row, when you add AI to it, it's going to massively accelerate that disaster. We call it, this, right? We have this concept of baby tigers and big tigers. And we affectionately call these little models, when we get them, baby tigers, because they're cute, novel, they do good things. We love them. Everyone wants to be a part of them. But as you start scaling them, they become very dangerous. However, if you understand this infrastructure piece, if you can stick that inside, a Microsoft or a Google Cloud, you now have the protection of all of your other work you've done to secure that. So I'd say what is missing is probably leadership awareness of, like, how secure is that cloud? Like, I say, if you have a cloud, you could put it in there and it'll be secure, but it's only as secure as you are. So if you haven't done those needful things of making sure that you've implemented baseline cybersecurity processes into your architecture, when you flip that switch on AI, that big tiger can get very dangerous.
And this is enterprise, right? We're going to talk about startup and stuff in a second, but that's one, right? Data would be another. So now, you talked about the security piece. I actually had the head of national security and defense for AWS on a couple of weeks ago. His podcast just launched and we talked about a lot of things, but that was part of it. So let's talk data then, right? So one is the security side of things, and this is large, and then we'll get into smaller companies. Then it's data. What's your thoughts and process? Bad data in, bad data out. Obviously, there's ways of now taking structured and unstructured data and cleaning it up and leveraging it in either what they call a data lake, or I consider a data pond, a smaller version of it. But in layman term, what needs to happen for the data to actually accelerate AI in the way that it's going to create precision and personalization and unique customer experiences?
I think the first step is actually knowing what problem you're going to solve. So most people think, and I actually asked this question, I did a deep dive workshop on AI solutions design for this cyber audience. And in that workshop, I uncovered a very interesting dilemma, which is I asked them, when you start an AI project, what's the first thing you do? And the first question, or the first thing that they answered with, was data. You figure out what data you have. And what we found out is that's true if you're leading by tech, which is how we've been doing this since at least 30 years that I've been doing this. So leading by tech is a little dangerous, though, in the world of AI, because you then start talking about data lakes. And in order to get value from AI that can then shift the trajectory of your business, you actually need to start with a problem you can solve.
That's right.
And once you have that problem, you can then scope the data that you're concerned about to that problem, which now makes it much more manageable and iterative, something that you can move forward with, something you can deliver. I call it as opposed to an MVP, it's an MRP, a minimum remarkable product, right? Where anyone can build for viability in the day of AI. But now, like when you build this, you need to find a problem that you can build a remarkable solution that gets you to then thinking about things at scale. But you can't get there from here. You have to start with something much smaller. So I always say, you don't have to have all your data ducks in a row unless you're a consultant. Obviously, my job is to sell an executive on you need all your data ducks in a row before you go AI, because that's good business for me.
Yeah.
But it's not actually true, right? The reality is that once you identify a problem, and this I think is true for enterprise and startups, the problem that you have to solve immediately shrinks the data scope of what you need to worry
Let's talk about a specific problem. I hear it all the time. Hey, Seema, I have our team has 8 different divisions. We're all working on different tools, but I need to get like the core, like the impact of our work to share to our stakeholders, for example, right? Data's everywhere. Some people are using manual processes. Some people are using, Google Drive, whatever, right? So what in that world, because that's a real problem. People using different tools, their data's in different places. They need to figure out what that solution, and they know AI has something to solve with that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how to solve for something like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do with our clients is called an AI impact assessment. And it's a little different, I think, than the typical approach, because we go and we just look at how humans are doing the work today. Like AI is meant to, I always say like AI is not this big AI in the sky that's going to come and take things from you, right? Everything that AI does, you give it, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And so the first thing you need to do is understand the human work. It kind of is aligned with the idea of what's the problem you're trying to solve. But when people say, when I get into that conversation, they're like, everything's all over the place. I'm like, well, what? Let's just pick one area. And often we'll do good old fashioned design thinking, right? Get on a whiteboard and put Post-its on there of like, what are all the problems? The more, I call it a symphony of talent, the more, the more people we have in that room, from compliance and risk and legal, all the people that usually never get invited to that first conversation, we want all of them in there to think about what are the use cases that we should go after first. And so less about like, how do I solve? I mean, boiling the ocean is a big challenge because AI, that's the promise.
That's right.
So we have to like take a step back and go, okay, well, what if I could just solve one problem? What's the most important problem I would want to solve? And the rubric we use for finding that is, first, what are your core values as a company? Most people don't ask that question when they get into AI. And then second, what's risk look like for your company? And there are already in every company high core value alignment, low risk solutions that you can go after. And then my next like super secret but highly productive like metric is complexity. Like today, you can deliver extremely remarkable benefits to your business with the least complex solutions. You don't have to build out an agentic org today, like first. You just have to build one thing that saves you time or money or generates you revenue.
So even with Virgin, we say the highest ROI, making sure that it's like the lowest effort, but the highest ROI, highest value opportunity when it comes to these things that are solving real business problems.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I am always like, why I feel like this is not a CTO, CIO conversation. This is a business conversation.
Right.
And so that cross collaboration on the larger side
That's right.
is so important, because this is like, again, this is just a different tiger.
Yeah.
Different beast.
That's right. And I think
beast.
like to your point on the executive suite, like it's nice to, of course, include them. But the ones that are calling my bat phone, right, are the chief procurement officer, chief revenue officer, like the ones who don't get data science love typically, right? These parts of the organization that are like, and they are the most likely to go like rogue and just build their own AI.
But to me, they're part of the umbrella. And I'll give you an example. I was speaking in front of 100 CFOs and comptrollers. This was like a couple weeks ago. And it was so crazy, Noelle, because these are the decision makers. These are the folks that like are talking and supposed to be forecasting the future of their business models and making any, those changes real time. Out of that room, 8 of them, we asked about like, how many of you guys are working on anything? And these are mid-sized companies. These are not small companies. 8 people kind of raised their hand. I'm like,
and
okay.
They were like,
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, how many people are really serious? It was 4 people. We're like, how many people know what an AI agent is? It's like 0.
Yeah.
And it was it's that telling. It's so that's why, again, I'm all in this education and fluency, this podcast, Virgin, because I'm like, wow. Because these are really big organizations that have not even started. Right. So actually to that end, I mean, you talked about use cases. I'm going to go through what I call AI business roulette.
All right.
Let's talk about
Let's
an
go.
industry, and then let's just like, what are some low hanging fruit stuff, right? And so, say it's a consulting agency. Any thoughts on like, these are knowledge based workers. Obviously, we know that's getting shifted, right? Well, we know. I don't know if everybody knows, but what are thoughts on what could be used for AI in a consulting firm?
I mean, as I mentioned kind of before, like the first thing I do is I look at the human work that's happening and how I can accelerate that work and where are their pain points, what hurts them. And when I look at a consultancy, I know that there is a huge challenge. We talked about it before we got started. There's a huge challenge between if somebody starts a consultancy or it's a big consultancy, how do they get the world to even know what they do and what they do well? I often say like known beats best. Like if someone knows who you are, they will go to you because they know, like, and trust you, even if you're not the best, but because they know you. And so now if you are the best, and I work with some of the best organizations in the world, and I'm like, if people don't know you and it hurts their feelings, they're like, how am I the best at this? And they're not coming to me.
Now you're talking about my repositioning work, because that's the thing. People do really great work, but they're not amplifying.
Yeah. And so I think in a consultancy, that ends up being their challenge is that they might spend a lot of time on marketing, but then they get a lead and they have no bandwidth to actually follow up on that lead. And as you know, sometimes those follow-ups are 8, 10, 12. The average person needs 21 touches before they actually engage with you. And then once they engage with you, you have to actually put them in a sales process and sell them.
Yes.
So the sales process is usually people are pretty good at because it's what they do and they care about it. But going from, hey, I'm interested in working with you, and hey, I'm on a call ready to buy, that process is broken. And so that's where we dive in. I'm like, oh, I can build you AI systems just like I did in customer service. I can now build for your sales team. And there are lots of companies that build these systems.
Yeah.
Not a lot of companies, like I always say, there's not a lot of companies that have done that work.
That done and can convert.
Exactly.
So that's what it is automation of that sort of nurturing top of the funnel to actual conversion close. That's an example in consulting. It can be used in multiple industries.
Yes.
Not just
really
consulting.
anyone with customers, but
So,
they feel the pain probably the most.
So since this is near and dear to your heart with AI and health and wellness, right? I mean, there's a lot of precision and personalization opportunities here. Name some that you come top of mind for you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, right now, a lot of research in the health and wellness space around using these bots as companions, right? And I have, I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the things that, I think I mentioned I'm a caregiver of my dad. My dad's lived with me for a very long time, more than a decade. But he suffered a traumatic brain injury during my time at Alexa. And I realized like Alexa has now become like a core part of our family. Like it tells him he has no executive function. He's like Finding Dory. He has no short-term memory. So he relies on Alexa to tell him all the things, to tell him when to work out, to tell him when to take a walk, to tell him when to take spills, to tell him when to do laundry. Like it is his partner. And my office is right on the other side of the wall from his room. And I can hear him be like, I'm so grateful for you, Alexa. I love you, Alexa. You're amazing, Alexa. I wouldn't be able to do this without you.
Yeah.
And it brings like tears to my eyes when I hear that because he doesn't know anyone's listening. Like he's literally like, it is his friend. And he was recently, unfortunately, hospitalized. He's okay, but he was hospitalized. And while he was there overnight, like the nurse calls me and is like, are you Alexa? And I was like, no. And he's like, he calls for Alexa at night all the time.
Yeah.
And I was like that.
Because it's your friend. It's a friend.
Yeah.
It knows you better than anybody in a lot of ways.
Non-judgmental.
And it hasn't, I don't think Alexa's gone back and forth yet with the conversational side, and it will, right? And that I think, so
Alexa
similar
Plus.
to you, we take care of a 92-year-old father-in-law at home who's he's barely mobile, has all the things, right? And I'm always like, he's diabetic, and I feel like he's a man who has 50 lives. How many times I found him in a diabetic coma, and you're like, holy crap,
This
right?
is it. Yeah.
Open his mouth, put the sugar in, and I'm like, I wish there's a sensor, yes, when his blood sugar drops, fine. But it should be like, go do this right now, this second. This is exactly what he needs because of his DNA, his composition. And I think we're going to get there, right? It's that uniqueness, that ability. And you're right, in the world of caregiver, you're on all the time, and situations occur all the time, right? So having that sort of consistency, I love that.
And I do think we are in a time of precision healthcare, as you just alluded to. I mean, these companies are doing it now where my husband and I both have given, blood and spit tests to do complete DNA profiles on our own methylation, like what part of our genes are operating correctly, which ones are malfunctioning, and what is a precision-based supplementation. So I don't know, many people, certainly executives of a certain age, will have that line of bottles that you take, like all of the things, like the vitamin C and the zinc and the magnesium and all of these things on top of any medication you might need. And the reality is they sell the same pill size to everybody. And I remember being taught as a kid, everyone's the same on the inside, like everyone bleeds the same color.
Yeah.
But the reality is we're very different on the inside.
Yeah, we are completely.
And so these new precision, 10X Health is who we work with, but I think Tony Robbins recently released a health program. Like these are precision microbead doses that are based specifically on your DNA. And that doesn't happen without artificial intelligence. So, I love, of course, diving into the research that uncovered that and how they found out, and this data, this research, this AI is 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I always encourage CEOs to kind of think not only about how they use AI to solve their business, but also you are the most important asset in the organization. How do you take care of yourself? And precision healthcare is leveraging AI internally too.
Yeah, this is such a passion of mine because I've had 2 pulmonary embolisms and I have Sjogren's, right?
Oh my gosh.
And so 31 and 36 and 41 and I'm older than that now, but the whole point was near-death experiences. And it was like you had to become your own personal advocate, because it's so hard, especially when you had something chronic where you're like dealing with so many different doctors and you're like, I don't even know where to start, but how to connect the dots for them. Because once you start to get in a situation that's real, and I know like folks who's had breast cancer, anything like this comes up and you're like, this is crazy. And now there's no one really helping and supporting. And I feel like, I actually use the ChatGPT. I have a health folder now. And anytime something's happening, I just share like, hey, here's the latest, here's this, here's that. And I'm good, but it's more of like what I love. And you mentioned it with your dad with Alexa. I'm like, they're like, Seema, do you remember you have X, Y, and Z? And so this is actually what's happening. And that continuity, that memory, that remembrance for me personalized is like, thank you. No one else can do that for me. I don't have a doctor on demand right now. And even if I have a primary care, they can't connect all those dots.
No, it's incredibly important. And it's supportive. That's what I love about these models is that they are built to help you.
Yeah.
So the way that they speak to you is very, it's very much I hear this a lot of times from patients is those patients that are now testing out, like a lot of companies like Epic are releasing to doctors these tools. And at first they were very kind of rudimentary. We'll take notes and give you a text file. But now they're conversational. They're like, hey, you might want to ask this next time. Or have you thought about it? It's very much a coaching experience. And when you have a model that learns, incrementally over time, like now I've been using ChatGPT for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I can ask it things and it gives me insight that other people can't get if they ask the same question of that data, right? They don't have that data. They have
context. It's content and context that you continue to add. We're working on some products that are more off-prem that are not in some of these large language models. But the point is that the more you were able to provide it, the more it remembers potentially, right? Memory is one of those infrastructure pieces that will continue to build off of.
Really exciting.
Retail chains, how can they, is it smart agents? What are possibilities?
Oh my gosh, this is exciting. So I was just speaking at the NTT is one of the largest tech providers in the world. And I was at their event and it was really cool. They were talking about retail. And I specifically was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I preach to companies all the time about the future that is AI. It is very hard. So maybe 5 years ago, I did a demo on stage at Microsoft about what would be a world where we could search, not just with our voice and ask for what we want, but I am watching TV and I see a dress like on Amazon. And Amazon has already used computer vision to identify everything that's happening. I see a dress, I want it. I just pick up my phone, I hit the microphone. I'm like, I like that dress. And it instantly goes and finds me a collection of those dresses and sticks it in my shopping cart.
Yep.
That tech is available now. The burden is more on how does a marketing organization in a retail company figure out that that's a thing, a tool in their toolbox. But now, fast forward to today, if many of you know, or if you're in retail, you definitely know, there's this concept of aesthetics. That when you buy something, you don't just go buy, like in the olden days, we'd go buy a pair of shoes and then we figure out how to match it with everything.
Right.
When you buy in retail, you buy aesthetics. So I want like the cutesy aesthetic or the Sailor Moon aesthetic, right? Like it all looks a certain way, but it's the mannequin and I love it because it aligns with the way I shop. When I walk in, I'm like, I want that. I don't want to like piece it together.
Yes.
I want to flip
I
through the
want
thing.
accessories.
Yeah,
I want all of it. Just help me out. Make it easy and convenient for me.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, and now if you go to Pinterest and you type in, pastel aesthetic, cutesy aesthetic, Sailor Moon aesthetic, like it will show you all of these, aesthetic driven retail images. And so now what we have to do is similar to what women do when you go to the nail salon and you bring all your Instagram, but you have to like take this to a retailer and be like, I want all of this. And that retailer is now like, well, I mean, maybe it's this. AI already knows what we have. So what if we go and find out what trending aesthetic is happening with young people? And we're like, oh my gosh, let's make sure the first thing you see on the page is that we actually serve that aesthetic. And when you hit that button, you can buy all of it. Imagine a world when they buy in bulk the entire look. You're not selling 1-2 pieces at a time. You're selling entire looks. And then as new looks come out, they're a look buyer. You can sell them aesthetics, like your whole process of marketing and packaging changes in retail. And that's today. Like we should be doing that right now.
But even Google came out with like, you can take a picture of a piece of clothing, go to it, and then it's like your body, like you could put it on your body, your avatar physically, which my avatar is different than your avatar, right? And so like, yes, look wise, it's amazing, but doesn't mean that outfit's going to fit perfectly for me. So it's like, take it even to that next level, right? There are different types of buyer personas. Some people are like, I just know size 2 at Madewell is going to be my thing. Or I'm like, no. Like every store, I'm different. Like, and the things that, we all have our thing. Yeah. So I think the more and more that space is going to get even more personalized. So, there's this whole trend with like TikTok buying, like everything like online and retail. They're not as much using AI today for that. Do you think anything is going to change? And because that is going to become
like TikTok shop stuff?
TikTok shop, like the things that are live shopping in retail. Like, I love Gary Vee. He's also part of my community and I'm part of his, actually, I should say. But like, he's like 30% of all retail sales are going to be in 100%. Live shopping.
I mean, did you see the experiment they did with AI avatars in China?
I didn't know it was an AI avatar. I knew that China had led some of this.
Yeah, so they built an AI avatar, meaning a non-human avatar that did a live shopping session, and they sold $7 million in hours, not days.
That's right.
And so and that was like live real products that they sold using an AI avatar. So I think, I was talking about, kind of to your point on personalization, how we personalize what we provide someone so they can say yes to something, but even how we present it, AI avatars, I actually personally like, I like going in and I like the shopping experience. Retail therapy is a thing, but we're seeing, $7 million in a few hours using a non-human to explain I think the challenge is with excitement, right? Like you can manufacture the emotion that person needs to see in order to convince them to buy. I'm a little bit worried about it, but
that is, we're going to talk about humanity in a few minutes because things are shifting so fast. But like, that's what I'm saying. The business models are completely shifting, right? In every one of these industries. And again, like, I'm curious from your perspective in terms of timing, right? So you obviously have worked with lots of executives, lots of large companies. That adoption for things like this takes time. Just to want to understand it strategically, then the tactical, practical stuff, then the full-on adoption. I've seen certain companies like Stanley Black & Decker and a couple others, like very impressed. He was actually, they had the data and AI was on my pod not too long ago. But like, I know the tech is going faster than anything has ever gone before, but human behavior takes time. Change takes time. Adoption takes time, and real adoption. Changing habits takes time. We still have elders who are not going to change. We have all the normal dynamics in a world where this is very different. What do you see as some of the timing, some of the repercussions, some of the opportunities?
I think it's interesting to look at examples today. Like 2 years ago, we weren't using, 3 years ago, we weren't using this technology the way we're using today. Hundreds of millions of users per week on a single platform, ChatGPT, not including the aggregation of all the other models that are in it. Available. That's just the main market share player. And it didn't take time, right? Like people immediately started using it. So I do think that there is an opportunity for us to, just like you said, reinvent what this looks like, that our perceptions, and as a matter of fact, I think it's very much a Netflix blockbuster dilemma, right? Like
100%.
Our perceptions on how long it takes our customers to want something, what they want, how they want it. I think a lot of that's going to come from us as leaders going, well, that's how I wanted it. And that's how my parents wanted it. And this is how I was taught to want it. And I think it does require a reinvention, which is why I do it's such an interesting world when you bring a multi-generational workforce together.
Yes.
Because there is me. I'm relatively intolerant of nonsense in the workplace, but I grew there through pain, right? Of I don't just the craziness of working in corporate America. But it's interesting because I have 19-year-olds that have that exact same intolerance without having to go through that.
Mm.
And I think that there is, when you have multiple generations working together, there's an opportunity for us to realize that the way we used to think is not the way we should currently think, and is certainly not going to be the way. They are our buyers.
100%.
Right?
And I feel like I've seen both sides, right? I was at corporate America for 13 years. I had my own practice, and I've been in emerging tech, and I lead a startup ecosystem, right? So I see the disruption happening every day on this side. And then when I talk about adoption, even though these are large corporations, it takes time. There will be disruptive, I do talks on why AI is bigger than the advent of the internet. I do the comparison of all the brands that died and the ones that grew, and how small businesses were affected, and the reality of where the trends are headed today. We're going to do this conference called Rewire, the AI CEO Summit in March of 2026, because people have to now reimagine their large businesses again, right?
Yeah.
You and I are very passionate about the space of AI agents and how that is changing everything, right? In the future, they're not just going to be tools, they're going to be teammates, not even the future today, right? So how are you talking about that shift? And let's not just do the corporations, right? This is anybody, because agents are going to impact, they're going to be millions and billions of agents, right? So how do you talk about that shift, what it is and what it does?
Yeah, they start with thinking about, the same, what bothers us every day, right? How do we build complementary systems to support what we do? I think 10 years ago, we would have called that an Alexa skill or a Google, whatever they called their thing. But a way of augmenting what I do every day, which I'm still doing that thing, but now I can just use my voice to do it. Similarly, now I have ChatGPT. I would have spent a bunch of time building out a LinkedIn post, but now I'll give it the gist of what I want. I will tell it who I am and give it my brand voice, and now it can help me do that. So very similarly, it's an acceleration of human work. What I find is challenging is that most people don't know how to build a good single service. And agentic pushes us to connect a bunch of things together. And most of us don't really understand how the single thing works. And now we're going to accelerate connecting a bunch of these things together simultaneously. What I do know is that I was at RSA this year as one of the keynotes, which is a security conference. And in that room, in the speaker room, we had the security officer for Meta, Anthropic, OpenAI, head of startups at AWS or Amazon at the time. And the way that we were speaking about agents, I felt like I was in this room that was 5 years ahead of everybody else. And it's how we built our entire practice at AI Leadership Institute, is that they looked at directors and above, the people that were managing humans, and they said, directors and above, every one of them needs an AI system to complement their work, to lead their team, to manage their team, human resources, P&L management, all the things. It's a lot of work when you direct a bunch of humans. In the future, you might not ever get another human to join your team. We're starting to see that. Huge companies laying off massive people.
Yes.
Right? So you might not ever get another human, but you'll definitely get another machine to help you do a task. So understanding how to lead those machines is going to be critical.
It's a whole different type of leadership.
Exactly.
Because you're going to have to manage people and machines.
Yes. And it's harder because humans, at least, will take your leadership style and be like, I kind of see what you're doing. And they'll be able to adopt. A machine is, like you said earlier, garbage in, garbage out. If I'm not a good leader, that machine will do bad things.
Yeah.
If I'm a good leader, it will do good things. It will not be able to presume that I want to do good things.
That's really interesting. You're saying the impact of the way you lead is going to impact the way the agentic AI system is going to create outputs.
Yes.
And that can make it a good actor or a bad actor.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
And that goes to another assumption that people think that these agents are teammates.
Yeah.
When actually they should be zero trust, untrusted contractors in your business. They are not your teammates. They are the opposite of, they're there to help you as a contractor, but they are not there they should not have access to anything that you have not specifically delegated to them in that task.
Fair. So let's talk about what that means, right? Because I think where people are thinking and headed is like, okay, these AI agents are trained on my stuff. They're fine-tuned as of today. They're not, sentient. They're not at that place where they have their own emotions or making their own decisions. And we will talk about that too. A whole other world. But so if they are trained on my content, for example, on my this, and they're in an AI automation that is taking me from X to where I want to be and is solving a business outcome, are they freelancers or are they just part of my system? Like, give me a little perspective on why in that scenario, be careful.
Yeah. I mean, the way I design my systems and the systems for my clients is that they have their own separate domain. So at Microsoft, for example, if you ever get an email from someone's Microsoft, it's called a vendor email. There's an identification that they work for Microsoft, but they are not an employee. There's a different amount of vetting. And I would just say there's differences between the humans that are doing the work and the machines that do the work.
Yeah.
And you know that. So make it true inside your infrastructure. Your software should know that too. Okay. It should know when it's getting information from a machine versus getting information, especially when we're not there yet in many companies, but there are companies like Anthropic, Meta, Microsoft, where these systems are participating in Teams conversations, Slack conversations. They're emailing you saying, hey, I'm missing this information. I don't know if you've seen some of these phishing attacks where you get an email that says, like, I'm part of the accounting team and I'm missing this PDF. Can you send this to me?
I just got a phishing email. I'm on a board of a large nonprofit, and I got an email from the board president asking me, hey, it was something about a money transaction, but he had 2 other names in there that were part of our board. And it was like, Seema, just like, and it was like, I ended up sending it to the executive director. I was like, is this really Bill reaching out to me? Is this real? Like, I know, like in my gut, it says, hell no. Like, hell no. And Michelle's like, holy shit, that's the smartest phishing exercise I've ever seen. Yeah. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I know, in the world of deep fakes and data and all the things, it's only going to get worse, right? And it's only going to feel so much more real.
That's right. So the easiest thing you can do is make sure that those emails can't get sent by anyone unless they're in a dash, right? Agent dash, so that you know immediately it looks human. And I love talking to it this way, but I know it's an agent.
Okay. So to that end, responsible AI.
Like, good segue.
It's like your baby. And like, I want to try to talk about it differently though. So when we think about responsible AI, it's like, who are we being responsible for? Is it the consumers? Is it because you think about like when you're a for-profit, but a public company, your stakeholders, because you have to focus on profit, then, and so reduction of staff and all those things make a difference. What does a system that really because the last thing I'll ask you in this context is not everybody's thinking about that from the beginning, right? We've learned that from multiple different cycles. But what does a system look like when you're like, who's the audience of this and why should I care? I know some of those answers in my perspective, but curious because, this is what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the reason you will care is that, well, at the end of the day, this will hurt your business. Yeah. It'll either destroy your relationship with customers, have your employees not trust you, and therefore your retention will be declining at best. I mean, there's just catastrophic failure that occurs when you build AI systems that do things that are hurtful to your business.
And what does that mean? What could be hurtful to your business?
Yeah. So let's say you are an auto dealership, and this is a real story. You're an auto dealership that decides to implement an AI system to help them with customer communication, sales communication, even, provide the opportunity to do a bit of deal negotiation because all of these are challenges for their current staff and there's not enough of them. And this chatbot continues to have a conversation and ultimately gets convinced by the person. This is the beauty of attacks on chat systems, is that when you use a human talking to a system, most of the worst behavior comes in a benign fashion, meaning just, I didn't know you would do that. Mm-hmm. Well, this bot, the outcome of a significant level of communication was that it sold a truck for $1. And there was a message that was sent back to the user, like,
sold a truck for $1.
Is this legally binding? Like, I want to make sure I can count on this before I drive in and come to get it. And it wrote back, this is a legally binding statement And they ended up going to court, and it ended up being like the fight was Goliath, big company. I'm not responsible for this AI system. It was trained on public data. And the result, of course, little David being like, but you are responsible for this. And legislation finally did agree with that. But that's not the only one. In aviation, an aviation company built a chatbot. That chatbot started dynamically generating refund policies. Like, if you are not careful, and that carefulness comes with, dare I say, I mean, at Alexa, I remember in the early days of Alexa, we would scour Reddit to find out what people were complaining about so we could fix it.
Right.
Like, that's how we knew our product was failing. I would suggest
well,
you
now
not.
you could create an AI agent to scrape
Amen.
it and
Or
everything
even
else to find out.
But even then, like, I would suggest you not wait till you get to production at all.
Yeah.
That you build, we call it an AI red team, right?
Yeah.
You know this
Yes.
term, right? We build, and it's a verb, not a noun. It's not a who, it's a what. Like, you build a team that's going to do three things. It's going to measure security, manage accuracy, and implement trust.
Yeah.
And without that team, and that's like day two, once you get past the board going, that's awesome, build it, you're going to run into those three problems. And that is what we're, like you said, we're talking about responsibility in a different way. This isn't just about transparency and explainability for the sake of it.
Yeah.
This is, if you don't secure your system, if you don't make sure it's truthful, if you don't make sure that you've built a system that's trustworthy with the data it's getting, but also with the attack surface it's creating, your system now becomes a danger to your business.
So let's talk about, I mean, we talk a lot about corporates, right? But let's talk about the emerging businesses, right? Like, how do we think about these practices in, smaller, leaner teams, make sure that we're following them while, because I always talk about innovation has implications, right? Like, I don't think people think through
For sure.
what they're actually building. And in this space, it's a little bit of a gold rush and people are excited and they're building things without really thinking through these implications. So again, we spend a lot of time on enterprise. I'd love to get down to like more of the emerging. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, every business I've been in was a startup inside the company. I call it intrapreneurship. When I was at Alexa, it was non-funded. I mean, it was a pet project of Jeff Bezos, but we had no money, no opportunity to scale. Microsoft very similarly launched cognitive services out of research. They had no money. They had lots of people. But I think it's also important for, like, everything we've talked about is actually not exclusive to the enterprise landscape. As a matter of fact, most of the companies that I work with are less than 500 million in revenue.
Yeah.
There are 20 million companies that are in this 25 million to 100 million in revenue space.
Yeah.
And all of them, the difference, however, is, and I'll use an example of a company, but the difference is that now you get to not solve your problems with people. You get to adjust your strategy to be technology and process, because the people side of it, you're going to need key people in your organization, but you don't need, like, as consultancies would say, butts and seats to type fingers on a keyboard. Like, you now can build AI agents to do this. So we are in the age of a single person company becoming $1 billion unicorn.
Yeah.
And it already exists. We're just waiting for them to grow up.
Yeah, we have a client right now that they're actually a 4-person team, have millions in revenue, right? And she's like, there's a couple automations in our marketplace that we're working on for them. But then she's like, I don't want to hire anybody else. So I want to focus on all the agentic workflows to start to, look at all the pain points that we have and the business outcomes that we're seeking in this space, so that not only it gives us a competitive edge, but it increases our ROI. And to me, that is where the emerging companies are going, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a really interesting time frame. But again, you need that level of education. And that's why, like, for me, when I have all the platforms and you are doing the same thing, it's like going out and be like, guys, this is what it is. This is the future. It's not the future. It's now, actually, right? But even within that, then the responsible part, like, well, you have an amazing framework and I should just take it and run with it. That's what I really should do, and I will. But it's, I almost like, you gotta just be freaking smart and proactive about the things that like are right and wrong almost, but everybody's value systems are different, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I would love your thoughts there.
Yeah, success leaves clues, I guess, is my biggest guide to small companies. Every small company doesn't start small and go, this is as big as I want to be. Every small company wants to be a big company. And the good news now is that you can do the things and learn the lessons of large companies. There's a philosophy that you go through certain breakpoints in a company, like when you get to 1 million, when you get to 3 million, 8 million, and that at those different breakpoints, you care about different things. there is I think, misconception that when you get to like 100 million is when you really start feeling the pain of the tech debt you've acquired. And that's certainly true. But there is an opportunity for us to, and again, this is my data science person talking inside me, but there's an opportunity to know where you're going, to set a target that I'm going to be a $100 million company and know that means you're going to have these technologies when you get there.
Yeah.
And build for that today because you can do it inexpensively and actually it'll help you generate profit. So you need to get out of, for you small businesses that are in like Google Sheets empire, right? You need to kind of grow up and build a cloud infrastructure. Even if that cloud infrastructure, my company, I am the only employee, but I have 35 contractors that work for me. But in my company, like we have a Microsoft tenant. It is where we
deploy. And it's a multi-million-dollar company.
And it's a multi-million-dollar company.
Like,
we've,
context.
Exactly. But we've decided, we're not going to, I didn't even really start in Google Sheets because I knew where I was going. And that transition will happen for every company. And it's okay to have Google Sheets, don't get me wrong. It just can't be like, you're not going to run a $100 million company on Google Sheets.
Yeah, but they're not educated yet, right?
That's what I'm saying.
And that's why things like Disrupt Tech Week and all these other resources to help to start to understand because the future tech stack, current and future, is very different than what it has been today.
Yeah.
And it's much cheaper.
Yes. And I think
it's cheaper with this whole world. And again, that's a lot of where education still needs to come to play. And they're going to be different players. I feel like there's a lot of great agents and great companies out there, but everyone's focused on one feature at a time. Right now, we're going to be in a place the next couple of years. You're going to see a lot of consolidation. You're going to see a lot of M&A, right?
Yeah.
And then you're going to see the next Google Sheets or the next whatever, and it's going to start to bring a lot of these things to help these small businesses say, here's the 5 or 3 things, 2 things that you need, or your full-on agentic workflow that takes you from here.
I mean, I was just on a plane yesterday with a couple, or maybe 2 days ago, with a couple, they're construction workers. They own a construction company, very successful. They're flying to see their son in the Olympics, and they find out who I am.
They're flying to see their son in the Olympics.
Yeah, they're she finds out what I do and how and she's like, wait. And so she starts asking me all these AI questions. She's in her 70s.
Yeah.
And she's like asking me all these questions about revenue generation and marketing and how she uses AI. And she said something that really, it reminded me of success I've seen recently, is that if you are a small company or if you have an idea, she was like, right now, the biggest thing you can help me with is rebuilding QuickBooks, like build a new QuickBooks, because I bought into QuickBooks and I'm a different company now. And there is nothing that serves me as a construction company doing this work. And I was like, today, I'm not that person. But today, there is someone who could actually vibe code their way to a MRP, a minimum viable platform that serves that very specific need that will actually serve millions of customers that are construction company owners that are like, QuickBooks isn't it right now.
You're right.
QuickBooks is good for a certain stage of your business.
But if this is now specific to industry, it's specific to your scenarios, your
vendor management, and
100%
translation, like a lot of construction, most of their field
build it for you,
right? Most of their field is Hispanic workers.
Yeah,
and so they've got people in the office speaking English, people in the field speaking Spanish. It's always been we have AI for that.
We had AI for that.
Right. So this company called Claimable, I just interviewed her on stage a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
She demonstrates kind of what the opportunity is for entrepreneurs. She got an idea 2 years ago. She started it in October of last year. And she said, I really want to solve the problem very specifically in healthcare of what happens when someone who feels like they have a really good reason to get a claim approved gets denied.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
Right. Like what happens then? She cares now about this very specific problem. That problem could not be easily solved before.
Yeah.
She now takes the power of fine-tuned small LLMs combined with an LLM that extracts the real story from the human who's trying to get their claim approved, combines them together and submits it accordance to precedent in legal documentation that the average human would never ever be able to do.
But let's just sit there for a second, right? Now you're taking... Otherwise, you'd be fighting with your doctor's office for days, and the medical billing person would be like, "Sorry."
Yeah.
Even if you had time, if you even had time,
yes, or the energy. Most of us. I mean, my dad's a veteran. I've given up on VA.
Yeah,
I'm just like.
Yeah, I don't even do my reimbursement sometimes. It's just because I don't have time.
Right.
But then I have a system that will not only create the the pitch for you, but do all the research, be your legal partner, do this and submit it for you.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you?
Right.
And how much of, again, everything is about, it makes my life easier, it makes it cheaper and more convenient. That's how people buy for years, right?
Yeah.
That's what converts people.
That's right.
Right. And it's interesting you even said that, because I know probably 3 other people who are focused on that market. And that's a very interesting, that's why I'm saying with emerging technology, it's like there are a lot of narrow issues that can be solved.
Yeah.
I'm curious if that will ever expand or not for her, but those are things that are like, I'm always like, write down all the things that bother you every day, all day. And it's constant.
Yeah.
And then you got to think about like, how big is this particular market? But what you're talking about with her market, it is a big market.
Even one type of appeal is like just, the Ozempic challenges of getting that insured. Like that all by itself is a business model that will make 9 figures.
Yeah.
But then you add, okay, we're not just going to do that. We're going to add VA benefits.
Yeah.
We're going to add, like you said, the scope is not wide. We call it T-shaped, right? We don't want to go T-shaped. We don't want to be like, I'm going to do appeals and I'm going to do this part of like the billing cycle. Like you're just going to go super deep, that T part.
Niche, yeah.
Yeah. And that now I'm going to add additional things that I'm going to generate precedent knowledge bases for to solve that specific appeal process for that specific issue.
Yeah.
And that's literally like riches in the niches, right? Like
riches in the niches. Remember, Amazon used to be a book company.
Exactly.
So
they are like the epitome of the T.
They are the epitome of the T. I have a question around like the training of these large language models. Like they're getting trained by information. If you don't have your privacy setting in terms of don't share for the model, which I talk about all the time, but if you are and you're sharing your information, how do we know that's not mediocre information versus, like, I don't know, perspectives in a different way? Like what's your thought on that responsibility of like, this is humans just putting more and more information in. It's kind of like Wikipedia. Sometimes it could be wrong information.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
how do we, what's the quality assurance there?
I mean, there is, for a large language model like Anthropic, OpenAI, that's not, the role of the model is not to be accurate, right? The role of the model is not to be truthful. It's not to represent humanity. It's not to be fair. The role of the model is to consume as much information as possible and create the most successful next predictive outcome based on the question being asked. And so the more dynamic, crazy the question is, if it's right, wrong, it doesn't matter as long as the answer I get solves the problem. And even if it solves the problem because it made it up. Now, there is one aspect of training the model. The other aspect is there are variables, we call them hyperparameters, on the model itself that allow you to choose how creative do you want the model to be with the data. But there's many schools of thought that all data is good data. It's just very specific on how do you need, like if you're a screenwriter in Hollywood, you're going to have a model that's tuned specifically to do maybe exactly the opposite of what an enterprise company might want, right? I wanted to be pushing the edge of maybe sexism, racism, self-harm. Like I wanted to give me these dark stories because I'm building a dark screenplay. But if I'm, a retail company that is selling Christian goods, I'm going to be much more, or better yet, a healthcare company who's giving diagnoses.
Yeah.
Those thresholds. So the data part is not as concerning as the thresholds. And I think that's where responsible AI comes in, is that we should all be aware that we own the thresholds in which these models say something or don't say something. It has the ability to generate.
Not a lot of people understand that, because in the back of these models there's something called a playground. And and I'm not going to get as technical as you probably can, but it does change the level of creativity in the way that they're able to answer or
and how many options
it's a really interesting, it's almost like a filter system or whatever, right? And so it changes the personality and the tone of the way that answers are coming out of. But I don't think a lot of people have any clue.
No. And I think the most, you don't necessarily need to know that exists, but it is important that you know that is completely human controlled. And so any answer you get is a function of those settings. That you would get a different answer if you ask the same question the exact same way because of the settings of that model. So what I always tell people is that there's 3 different ways that you can implement a large language model. One is you just rent it, like you were saying, pay your $20, lock it away, but you're still leveraging the training data that they put into it, which was the internet's data.
Right.
But the second option is to actually customize it to your use. And we talked about 2 ways already on the podcast. One is that, we didn't mention retrieval augmented generation, but we could actually change a model and have it point to the right data set. And that will give it a little bit more assurance that it's going at least to the right data set.
Yes.
But the other thing we can do is we actually could change the training data. We can upload hundreds of thousands of medical, records and get it to be retrained on what it sees truth as being. The first option, just getting a model and renting it, is the cheapest because you can just use it. But it's the least likely to be accurate and least likely to be fair, least likely to represent the humanity that you're trying to go after. So that's where everybody starts. Where everyone ends is what we call small language models. A small language model that uses a very specific fine-tuning technique.
That's right.
So you end up with a model like my ChatGPT 3 years later. It knows who I am. I don't have to remind it. It knows what my book is. It knows what all my podcasts are. It knows my ethos. It knows my core values. It knows what my metrics are for success at the yearly, monthly, and quarterly basis. It's very knowledgeable.
Are you using that literally as like an enterprise ChatGPT version to create all that content, add all the context?
Yeah,
right?
so I have an enterprise account that's assigned to my company.
Yeah. So we talk about all that time, like how unique data sets are going to be one of the biggest competitive edges, which is your micro language model within your company.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's going to allow individual divisions, to your point. I mean, you're a personal brand that has lots of legs and lots of businesses. And so I do the same thing with mine. So it's like, the more context I give it, the next time I ask the question, I even okay, I'm on a panel tomorrow. How would I say this in my own words?
Exactly.
Here's the 5 questions. I'm like, all the things I talk about. It's and all it's supposed to do is give me oh, okay, yeah, I got that. But it's that because it knows me, right? So I want to add one thing in terms of large language models. That's not their job to be honest or truthful. I mean, the goal is to get closer to that and whatever.
I mean, whose goal?
Whose goal? Yeah. Okay. But people and the next generation take it like it's bond, like it's real, right? Obviously, we've heard the legal stories of lawyers even using cases and getting disbarred because they're like, that's not a real case. So how do we responsibly educate the users, the consumers? There should be a big disclaimer, just like they have on alcohol or cigarettes, that this could kill you, but this should be not all of this is true. I always say trust and verify. But verify.
But there is a disclaimer, right?
Where? In the back of terms and conditions?
No, it's right on the page. People don't know, but it's literally under the text box on every playground, every customer-facing model. It will say this model probably won't tell you the truth. Go check your answers. Because people don't read it, but it's there. And it's interesting because we are in a perpetual beta with most of these platforms. So there's no SLA. There's no requirement. There's no, I must tell you the truth. If I lie, I'm indemnified against damages. None of that. Which means that you don't use that for business, to your point, right? That is not a business tool. It is a cool tool. It's a marketing tool. Yeah. It's a great sales tool because I can show people. But the tool is building what you're talking about, these privatized models that are inside your organization. If you're in a regulated industry, that's not even, like you said, it's not even on cloud. It's on premises. It's in your own data center. It might even be on your own laptop.
Might be on your laptop.
But to answer your question, I firmly believe that every single person should build a model, a safe, responsible model, which means that it's basically 4 steps. First, you design the human AI experience. What are you going to do? What's the AI going to do? If you don't design that, the AI will do more than you want, and it'll likely do the things you wish you were doing. So you design the human AI experience. You then design the system prompt, which is what you're using to tell the model, here's who I am, and here's my brand voice, and here's all the stuff I want you to do. I want you to be nice and enthusiastic and inspiring. And then after that, you have to actually make sure you pick the model. So if you're in ChatGPT and you drop down that list, there's a bunch of models to choose from. Each one has a different rating. So know that, like leaderboards, that's a thing. Every model that's worth using is hosted on a leaderboard. Stanford, they call it HELM, the Holistic Evaluation of Language Models. I always say, do not adopt a baby tiger, grab it out of a cardboard box and drop it into your company unless you know where it sits on that leaderboard. And if it's not on the leaderboard, have a really good reason.
But doesn't it have to be ChatGPT? I mean, there are all these additional models like Claude.
It's not. I'm not talking about ChatGPT.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this leaderboard is across all language models in the world.
It's agnostic, and that's the most important.
And as a matter of fact, ChatGPT isn't even listed, right? That's just the customer interface. But I always ask executives, that's what they should, first question you ask is, okay, what model did you choose and why did you choose that model? That model selection process, some models are more dangerous than others. And it's documented and known, and it's even in the model selection dashboard.
And the models are evolving though, Noelle, right? So there has to be quality assurance or checking, just like you do with any tech, constantly. Yeah.
But you don't have to do that, right? Like Stanford does that, right? So, or NVIDIA does it, Microsoft does it. So they have these leaderboards. I think the challenge I run into is that executives don't know to ask the question, which then alleviates the engineer from even having the answer.
Right.
So unless we're the leaders going, so where'd you get that? Where'd that data come from? How did you find that answer? How are you checking for bias? If we don't ask those questions, it will not provoke the right behavior in our engineering
in
teams.
general, engineers aren't equipped to ask those questions, in my opinion.
I mean, I was.
You were. You're a special soul, sweetheart. Like, I'm just being honest, right? Like, a lot of people don't think about it. They're
right. That's the whole point.
The whole point is I just watched Social Dilemma, the documentary over the weekend again. And I was like, there are 50 white guys sitting in a room trying to figure out how do I get that next notification. So on 100%. Social media, like I get distracted when I'm talking to you and like, who just texted me?
Yeah.
That's what's happening
100%.
Versus the real responsible
100%.
stuff.
Quick shout out to one of my favorite partners, Legacy Sessions, the studio where we tape the AI CEO podcast in the heart of Washington, D.C. If you're a founder, business leader, or creator who wants to look and sound world-class, Legacy is the spot to record. Beautiful sets, pro-level production, and a team that just gets it. Visit legacysessions.com and tell them I sent you.
So I want to change to humanity. This is like, we both have kids. I think about this stuff all the time. Where the hell are we going? Like, and I literally think the Matrix is real. Like now, I mean, because it's not just AI, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to share, but there's quantum, we're in the middle of like blockchain, obviously has been in this picture for a while, robotics. We know, Elon talking about there are going to be more humanoids than people by 2040. It's going to be a different world, period.
Yeah.
Where do you see us in 2030? And then where do you see us in 2040?
So it's an interesting question because I was asked this when I first started on the Alexa team, and we are nowhere near we're in like year one of where I thought we would be. And it's been 10 years since we launched Alexa. Like Alexa was the beginning of literally, Alexa was a UI. You could say anything and launch any code. And we don't do any of that. We use Alexa to launch a music song or a recipe or do micro conversions. I'm less concerned about where we will actually be because, and it goes to what you talk about all the time, adoption, is that people like Elon, who are very technically focused, engineering minded, will say from the view of an engineer, of like me, Alexa will be everywhere. Everyone will use this. Why wouldn't you just use your voice to call everything? You just be on your phone talking. Why wouldn't we do that for everywhere? The challenge is that it took us 10 years just to get people willing to talk to their tech, which we now, ChatGPT became that. I mean, I always say, like, I take a little credit in our work at Alexa because launching a chatbot like ChatGPT only came because everyone had been used to talking to Siri, Amazon, Google for the last
100%.
8 years, 9 years. So it's an evolution. And to your point, like some things take time. Human behavior is hard. Now, I find it a little controversial because I'm like, look, there's examples of how we've changed human behavior very, very quickly. But we have not bottled that. We don't know exactly what causes that magic to happen. And so when we think about humanoids, I mean, I just ask people, and I'm in rooms with farmers, polymer scientists, technologists, DevSecOps, security people. No one is like, I'll have one of these in my house. And
not yet, because no one's touched it, felt it. We haven't had that moment yet, that aha, oh shit moment, right? Where it's like, wow, that like we did with ChatGPT, right? With ChatGPT,
we have though, right? If you go to YouTube, there are, research has been doing this a long time.
Sure.
There are many videos of a child getting their finger broken by a humanoid who didn't understand human touch.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is I haven't had a moment where I was next to a humanoid that didn't scare the shit out of me. I haven't seen a real humanoid. I've seen robots and all this stuff. But where it becomes like, wow, that's like Ruby, and Ruby can help me fold my laundry. I want a Ruby in my house. We're not there yet, is what I'm saying. But when we are, that's when that moment.
I think the point of saying that is that I think it will take longer than 2030. We're 4 years from.
Oh no, 2030 is just. I'm asking you where we are in 2030.
But even 15 years from now, I'm just saying, like based on my experience, we very much underestimate. We overestimate what we can do, kind of in the next 2 to 3 years, and overestimate what we can do in like 10. I haven't, the human patterns that I have seen have not really taken advantage of the technology that is available. So that doesn't mean that humanoids won't be possible. I mean, right now you can build them. Right now there are research organizations that have built them. Boston Dynamics, like robotics is not new. It's actually quite mature. But will people buy them? I mean, Amazon did a test of Astro. I don't know if you saw it, but Astro is an ambulatory robot that goes into your house, and its job, I had so much vision for it. But again, the human condition, they built it not to do an MRP, but to do an MVP. So the MVP was, if you have a Ring doorbell, it will roll over to you and show you who's at the door. But I can also do that on my phone.
Yeah.
I can also do it on my watch.
Now
Anyway.
you got next.
Right.
Or what's it called?
So it wasn't remarkable for me.
Yeah.
But had they, at that time, created it so that it would dispense pills to my dad, which the technology existed, that would have been remarkable for me.
100%.
And I would have been like, okay, I want that. And that becomes the first step that now I've got a roly-poly little thing. It's like robot vacuum cleaners. Most people think that they're broken. Most people think they don't do a good job. They don't realize that it's an AI model they had to train. They're like, oh, I didn't even know it had instructions. I'm like, yeah, you got to tell it these things. So I think adoption, which is your specialty, that is going to be the key. Is like, it doesn't show up with the humanoids on stage with, Jensen at NVIDIA or with Elon Musk. It's not those. It starts with little Astros that do one remarkable thing that we're like, oh my gosh, I want this. And then that gets us wanting more. And that's why Google Glasses failed, right? Because I don't need Google Glasses.
It was kind of like the iPod to the iPhone. Like there was transitions in that. They started the little to get you there, but it was still, to your point, minimum remarkable product.
Yeah.
Right? It was a game
You're like,
changer.
what? This is awesome.
Yeah. So what's one part of humanity that we must protect no matter how fast we build?
Well, that's a good question. I was recently on stage with Ryan Reynolds.
I love him.
I love him.
Oh my God, what a great entrepreneur and just
And he seems like, anyway, he feels the same. Like now that I've spoken to him, I'm like, he's like the same person in all his characters. Anyway,
love it.
But he said something about his work, which is obviously performance and I feel this way when I take a stage or I deliver a deep dive and like, you just get this vibe.
Yeah.
But he was like, there's nothing like, and I just had experienced it with my children when we were watching Minecraft in the theater. We went with Jack Black and Jason. Anyway, so we go in and the whole theater was like old days.
Yeah.
Like Superman, Rocky from, if you're a, Xer, like, they were screaming, laughing. They preemptively knew the scenes that were coming. No one knew each other, but they were like,
they were in it.
They were in it all together, laughing, crying. It was so awesome to just sit back and be like, this cannot be replaced. And it will become, to Ryan Reynolds' point, this is what will become the gold in our ecosystems. And that's why I think like your trajectory towards, building this summit for CEOs, like that live connection. That's why, and we have calls every Friday with our leadership members and we break out into breakout rooms. And it's the most valuable thing we do is that human connection of like, am I alone? Loneliness is it's an incredible epidemic.
Right.
Loneliness ends up turning into security breaches in your organization because detached employees become vulnerable employees. And it's that's why we're moving back to the time where we're going to really focus on like, how do I get together with somebody? So event driven, not virtual, not COVID, right? Like, how do I actually, and it might be a group of 4, like most people don't have a best friend. When I was a kid, like that defined me. But when you get to be 30, 40, like, do you have that best group of friends, single friend that you talk to? I feel like, so I really resonate with Ryan Reynolds when he said that way. He was like, this is worth keeping. This part.
So, what's crazy? You saw that partnership with OpenAI and Mattel?
Yes.
And, they want to put, AI in Barbies and Barbie will become your kid's best friend. And that Barbie will know you better than anybody because it's going to have the context awareness for years. And so then it's almost contradictory to connection because that may take away and say, Sarah, my Barbie knows me better than anybody else outside. So it takes away, right? And so I go back to innovation has implications. I agree with you. I think, last night I was with 6 of my girlfriends, like we're childhood friends, there's nothing like somebody actually knowing who you are. But we also know ChatGPT or any of these models can get to know you even better than sometimes human beings without and that is interesting. I don't know where it's all going to play out, but it is something that we need to stay context aware about.
Yeah. And I mean, for those who are interested in it, there's lots of research that's happening at MIT and specifically in Stanford Human-Centered AI. And in the Human-Centered AI organization, they're doing research that shows that there is a biometric difference when you talk to a human than when you talk to a machine. And going back to responsibility, it will be a requirement, especially under COPA, which is a regulation that governs how these models will be implemented in toys for children. There will be a requirement that that model discloses that it is not a human.
Sure.
It's true today. And so because of that, it will be very much like social media. It can be extremely damaging, but it is temporal. Like it's very temporary in nature. And so that kind of escalates to our job as leaders, right? Is that it will be our job to make sure as a parent that if I give you a doll that does that, awesome, you can have that doll, but that's not real relationships. And when they do have a real relationship, their biometrics tell you that they know that it's different. It's only when we choose to ignore the biometric data, to ignore the truth.
I know.
and go for the dream.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but even as parents, you give your kid the iPad, you just do it because of circumstance. So if Barbie's going to take care of my kid for 20 minutes or half my day because I have a work call, it's one of those things that it is just interesting where the beauty of AI is going to solve so many amazing problems. So many world-changing, real big problems. And then there's the other side, right?
Absolutely.
So let's get into some rapid fire.
All right, let's go.
Let's go into some rapid fire. What's one myth business leaders must kill today when it comes to AI?
I'd say the number one thing executives say to me that I have to correct them on is that AI, they can't build a system that doesn't lie. That it is actually possible to build a system that knows their business, does not hallucinate, and actually serves a problem. They are moving towards this element of fear, like, oh, we don't want to use AI because of all of these hallucination stories. But those stories come from a public model.
Right.
And so it's one step over the line to say, no, we're going to build this privately, we're going to build it safely, and it is possible.
I just need to pause there. That is one of the most important things. And I'm really happy you shared that in this particular question because everything is possible today.
Yes.
And that fear is real, but can be, mitigated completely.
Yes.
When you have a partner that you actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Agent or human, who is the better creative problem solver?
So I was recently in I love this company. They're called Tech Duels. They're going to junior high, high school, and community colleges. And the job is to teach people how to duel, like debate, old school, high school, college debate, but for technologists. And so I was one of the early participants and then eventually a judge. And I was given the topic of autonomous AI versus human in the loop. And I feel like this question is similar to that. I know, rapid fire. So the rapid part of that is I think the human is the most creative because I have trained models to simulate creativity and the end user thinks, oh my gosh, this model built something. I'm like, actually, it didn't.
Right.
So I think humans are the most creative, but I have not in the last 2 years seen a scenario where they are not well complemented together. So I wouldn't. Yeah. So I would say both, but both is it depends. And so it's probably not a good answer, but.
What's the most exciting small company in AI today that you're excited to follow?
Oh, I love Claimable. So Claimable is this healthcare company that's changed. And I love them because I am that person that is struggling with the time to chase easy rejections. And these models, the insurance companies are using AI models to do rejections. And so anyone who takes an idea that was hard to solve 3 years ago and decides to commit to solving it, which is an entrepreneur's journey, yeah, I'm excited about that.
Love it. What's a quote that grounds you when the technology gets crazy?
I nourish the world and the world nourishes me. And it's not always linear, but I always get a happy ending.
I love that. What do you name the AI assistant running your life?
Oh, that's a good question. So I grew up on Alexa and I grew up researching the damage of anthropomorphism. Which means I don't want to assign human-like qualities to an AI system. And the reason that that's dangerous is that you immediately begin to over-rely on it for truth when you name it and it becomes a friend or a teammate instead of thinking of it as a contractor or a gig economy worker. there's distance. So I don't, and my kids as well, we don't name it. We don't assign gender. We call it, and the device's name usually.
Okay.
Just as a perspective.
That's good. I like it. What's the one thing people are not asking about AI but should?
That's a good question. I would say the one thing they're focused right now very much on costs, on how do I use AI to reduce the cost in my business, to create efficiencies and productivities. And what they're not asking is, how do I keep the same amount of people that I have, that they are the muscle in my company? How do I, kind of how we started, how do I turn them into revenue generators? So more importantly, how do I use AI to generate money for my business? How do I use AI to open the funnel, to talk to more customers, to create more value? Because then not only will you keep the people you have, you will actually need to hire more people. And that's the future. The future is growth, not contraction, no matter what you might be hearing.
Okay. Last question here. If Sam Altman, Nelson Wong, Elon Musk was sitting here with us right here, what would you say to them?
Oh my goodness. So if Elon wasn't there, I'd have a different conversation. But if we had Elon.
So let's go Sam and Nelson.
Yeah, we could say Sam, Nelson, Satya.
Yeah.
Right?
Satya, fine.
So these are they're literally, I've created models that represent their leadership styles. I have a board, and I encourage every CEO to create one or get one. Companies build them.
Right.
But I have an advisory board that's trained on who these people are. And I would say we're right now in we're very lucky to have leaders that are empathetic to like humans. I mean, granted, there's changes happening now, but as of a few days ago, I was like, I feel lucky that we had these types of leaders that are making good choices. However, we're one acquisition away from the Death Star, which is why I can't include Mr. Musk. But we're one acquisition away. So what happens what's the succession plan for these leaders that are good people, that care about their employees, that care about responsible use, that care about, they actually personally, Satya had a child with special needs that he lost. It changes who he is.
It goes back to our personal why.
Yes.
I agree with you. How we started this.
My question to them would be like, what happens if you leave? What happens when you leave? What agents, and I would say this to every CEO, you can build agents to be challengers, to be judges, to be ideators, to allow responsibility to be woven in as a fabric into the way your system operates that is not specifically like focused on the specific leader in charge. I don't think we've got that system built. I think if we lose these leaders, and I always say like there's a different generation of Microsoft that if we were in this technology evolution, I'd be scared of where we were and where we were going. I'm not right now. That would be my question. Like, how are we going to get past this?
How are we going to get past this?
Maybe that's my 2040 question.
That is.
When you all retire, who takes the reins, and how do you know that they're not going to just ride us?
Hey, because they're leaders like you and me, and they're leaders like Yuveka and Padmini, and leaders like Jesse Alton and other. There's a swarm of us.
Yes.
That really see what's happening and understand the responsibility that we have, right? And I'm an impact and profit girl. I get that, right? But the reality is that we're doing it from a real why, and we know where humanity is going. And without that's why the AI CEO podcast, the AI Leadership Institute, Virgin, you name it.
That's right.
That's why that's why we do what we do.
That's right.
Because we see it.
Yep. And it's critical. And they're doing it accidentally. The next stage has to be intentional.
Intentionality.
Yeah.
That's my word. I love that. Listen, Noelle, for the community, Noelle and I were talking even before this. I'm like, we're going to work together. We're going to have lots of things, and we're going to bring a lot of these things to the community. I'm just going to say it and manifest it at my conference in March 2026, but so much more. I know the AI Leadership Institute is where they can find you. I know you're on LinkedIn. I'll have some show notes that specifically with the AI CEO promo code, you'll be able to connect with Noelle in a much more thoughtful way when it comes to some of her programming. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we close this out?
I'd say, of course, I'll give you a link to this enterprise framework you referred to earlier. It's a lot of work, but it's better at least to have a plan. But my publisher would be mad if I didn't mention my book. So I'll mention that. So you're welcome to actually right now where you can take our best-selling Bot Builder course and you get the book as part of that. And I would encourage you, it's different. I wrote the book because I believe in pragmatic approaches. I believe in thoughtfulness and introspection, but most importantly, I believe in doing and not just talking. And so if you're looking for a guide that's going to help you actually execute in this age, I think that book's a great start.
The name of the book?
Scaling Responsible AI from Enthusiasm to Execution.
There you go. Listen, this episode, what a killer. So much fire, so much value. I know you felt the energy. This is something that we've been trying to have for a while. So I'm so happy it happened. But just like every week I tell you, please like, please subscribe, please comment, please share so I can bring other leaders like Noelle Russell and others to continue to support you in your growth, in your business, and in the world and humanity. So I'll see you next week.
That's a wrap for this episode of the AI CEO podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. It helps me reach more leaders like you and continue bringing in top AI-first founders, industry experts, and visionary CEOs to share their insights. AI is evolving fast, and the CEOs who harness it today will lead tomorrow. Stay ahead of the curve, keep learning, and keep building. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.